Hey everyone, I'm Alex and welcome to my urban gardening diary. This year, I'll be showing you how I'm growing plants in the city, sharing what works, what doesn't, and everything in between. So let's dive into this journey together. I live in a fairly cold, semi-continental climate where the temperatures and rainfall vary quite a bit throughout the year, specifically Zone 6B if you are into gardening maps. Despite that, I'm determined to grow as much as I can in my small urban space. On average, winter temperatures here drop as low as -7 Celsius, while summers remain mild, typically staying around 23 degrees Celsius. However, these are just averages. In 2022, for instance, temperatures range from a summer peak of 36 degrees Celsius to a winter low of -16 Celsius. According to a quick Google search, these temperatures are similar to places like Bristol, Birmingham, Denver, or Minneapolis. When it comes to precipitation, rainfall is somewhat consistent, with spring and early summer being the wettest months. My town receives an average of 11 or 1200 millimeters or 43 to 47 inches of precipitation per year, which makes it similar to cities like Seattle, Vancouver, Helsinki or Zurich. However, most of the precipitation comes in form of somewhat heavy rain, with cloudbursts and hail being fairly common. My town is nestled in a vast valley in the heart of the Carpathian Mountains, where clouds often break over the peaks, bringing heavy rain that can easily damage outdoor crops. These conditions make urban gardening an interesting challenge, but that won't stop me from making the most out of my space. Now, let me show you my setup. I'll be growing indoors on my windowsill, out on my balcony, and in some garden boxes outside of my apartment building, experimenting with what works the best in these conditions. Whether you have a big garden or just a small city balcony, I hope this series will inspire you to grow something too. Let's get started. Since I don't have a huge outdoor space, some of my plants will be growing indoors for their whole life cycle. Two of my main indoor crops this season are dwarf tomatoes and peppers, both spicy and sweet varieties. Dwarf tomatoes are perfect for indoor growing because they stay compact, don't need a lot of space, and can even thrive on a sunny windowsill. Plus, fresh homegrown tomatoes in the middle of spring or early summer? Yes, please! I will be growing Vilma tomatoes, which is the variety of dwarf tomato that is particularly well suited for small spaces, especially container growing. It's known for its compact size, typically growing up to 35 centimeters or 14 inches tall, and only needing 20 centimeters or 8 inches in between plants, making it a great choice for urban gardeners with limited space. Despite its small stature, the Vilma tomato plant produces a good yield of small, round, and red fruits that are sweet and flavorful, with each plant producing up to 150 tomatoes. This variety is also pretty easy to take care for and fairly cold resistant, making it a popular choice for beginner gardeners. A month has passed and our baby tomatoes have grown big enough to be replanted into larger pots. Instead of buying new containers, I'm recycling ones from my groceries. These pots were originally tomato packaging and the dishes come from hummus containers. Since they are transparent, I can easily monitor root growth and know exactly when it's time to replant again. Recycling like this not only reduces waste, but also gives everyday items a second life, making urban gardening more sustainable and budget-friendly as well. Peppers take a bit longer to grow, they love warmth and plenty of light, which makes them great for indoor gardening, especially in colder climates. I'm growing both sweet and spicy varieties, because why not have a little heat in my kitchen? This year, I've decided to grow some Hungarian peppers, small spicy cherry peppers and some regular sweet ones. These sherry or alma peppers, as they are called in Hungarian, are ideal for pickling, while the sweet ones can be eaten raw as a snack or used in cooking. Right now, they are just getting started, but in a few weeks they'll be growing their first true leaves, and soon enough I'll be transplanting them into larger pots. Next up, sunflowers. I'm starting both giant and dwarf varieties. The dwarf sunflowers will be more for decoration and to attract pollinators, and I'll probably keep them both indoors and outdoors. The giant ones will eventually go outside in my garden boxes, where they will play a bigger role than just looking pretty. I'm actually taking inspiration from the traditional Three Sisters gardening method used by many Native American cultures. Since I don't have space for corn, I'm adapting the idea by using giant sunflowers as my trellis instead. Later in the season, I'll plant cucumbers to climb up the strong sunflower stalks, and eventually I'll add squash to cover the soil. Of course, cucumbers aren't nitrogen fixers, but that's what fertilizers are for. I simply love the idea of plants supporting each other naturally. Now, there is a common rule that sunflowers should always be direct sown because of their fragile taproot, which doesn't like being disrupted. This is because sunflowers have a carrot-like taproot that can grow up to 1 meter or over 3 feet deep. And while that's generally true, I actually tried transplanting them last year, and it worked just fine. Luckily, I'm planting these sunflowers well ahead of time, so we can treat this as an experiment. We'll see if starting them indoors and transplanting them later makes them thrive just as well. If not, we can always plant more sunflowers directly in the ground later. Luckily, sunflowers grow so quickly that we can afford to lose a little time. When transplanting sunflowers, from my experience, the key is to be gentle and to move them to bigger pots before their roots get tangled and crowded. So I'm doing the same this year. I'll transplant these giant sunflowers in larger containers soon, so they have plenty of space to grow before I move them outside. Sunflowers grow really fast, so it won't be long before these need some more space. Next up, salad greens and some pak choi. These are some of the fastest growing crops, and while I'm starting most of them indoors, they won't be staying here for long though. Normally, leafy greens would be perfect for both indoor and outdoor garden, but I have some uninvited guests. Slugs. For some reason, they always find their way to my gardening boxes and they love munching on lettuce and bok choy. I've tried getting rid of them before using organic methods, including beer traps, with some success, but they still manage to munch on some of my greens. I should also mention that some of the slugs here are huge. They even look like snakes, and since I have a phobia of them, I've decided to work with what I have this year. I'm starting my greens indoors to give them a head start, and once they are sturdy enough, I'll transplant them to my balcony where they will be hopefully safer. Leafy greens usually don't need much space, so I'll be transplanting them into containers on the balcony where I can harvest them later without worrying about slugs. The great thing about these plants is that they grow quickly and they are pretty cold resistant, so in just a few weeks they'll be ready to move outside. I'll have to keep an eye on the temperatures, but once it's mild enough, out they go. Now it's time to plant something that's staying outside from the start. Spinach. Unlike my other leafy greens, which I'm starting indoors, I'm sowing these directly into pots on my balcony. Spinach is pretty hardy, so as long as the temperatures don't drop too low, it should do just fine out there. Like salad greens and pak choi, spinach is a cold-loving plant. That means it actually can't be grown in the warm months. Once it gets too hot, it bolts or starts to flower before fully grown, which makes the leaves turn bitter. Now that we've got everything started indoors, let's take a look at my outdoor garden. I'm getting these garden boxes ready for spring, mostly just removing weeds and topping them off with fresh soil. It's all about preparing the space for the next round of planting. So as you can see, these garden boxes are a DIY project and while they don't look perfect, they do the job just fine. Here you can also see some strawberries that I planted last year and they have been overwintering in these boxes and I'm happy to see that they survived the cold. They should start flowering soon and hopefully I'll have fresh strawberries to pick later in the season. It feels great to see the garden coming back to life after winter. With the boxes prepared, I'm ready for the next phase of planting. I've decided to replant some of my strawberries to a better spot since not all of my garden boxes are completely filled with soil yet. I built these boxes last fall in preparation for this year's growing season, so I haven't had the chance to top them off yet. Once the strawberries are moved, I can finally add fresh soil and get everything ready for planting. Now the garden boxes are prepared, it's time to plant something that thrives in cool weather: radishes. Radishes are cold hardy and super fast growing plants, making them the perfect early season crop. Unlike some other veggies, radishes don't need to be planted too precisely. I'm just sprinkling them randomly and letting them do their thing. A little bit of chaos gardening. They'll figure it out and I'll thin them out later if needed. Since they grow so quickly, usually in just few weeks, they'll be ready to harvest right around the time the weather warms up. That means by the time they are done, these garden boxes will be perfect for my warm season crops like sunflowers, cucumbers, melons, and squash. I love planting radishes early because they give me a quick harvest and at the same time they help loosen up the soil for the next round of plants. A win-win. And that's it for this month's urban gardening update. It feels great to finally get things started, both indoors and out, and I can't wait to see how everything grows. I'll be posting these garden diary updates at the end of each month, so if you're curious to see how things are growing, or if you just enjoy watching plants do their thing, make sure to stick around for the next one. In the meantime, let me know what you are planting this season. Have you started your seeds yet, or are you waiting for warmer weather? Drop a comment below. I would love to hear about your garden. See you next month and happy growing!